friends, Ginny D here, and I have to tell you that out of all of the pieces of my Jester costume from Critical Role, her tail has been easily the most requested tutorial. I especially got a lot of questions about it after I did my Jester's music video because it is extra bouncy in that one.
Healing or slashing or lollipop bashing, we aim and we cast our spells.
Good news, it is extremely easy to make. I actually needed to remake mine for reasons that I'll go into in this video, so I am going to walk you through the entire process and show you a few different ways to create a tiefling tail or a devil tail in this style. This design is actually really simple. It's a tube of some kind for the length, and then a spade for the end, and then it connects to your body at the base. To suspend it so it doesn't drag on the ground, I just have added a little bit of fishing line, and then you connect that line to something, your wrist, your skirt, whatever makes sense for you. I'm not gonna provide an overall materials list because you can use so many different kinds of materials to make this. Instead, I'll talk about all the different options as we go through each step. We'll start with the length. In my first version of this tail, I took a rectangle of quilt batting and rolled it up really thin and hand stitched it closed into a little tube. This has worked fine for a long time. It's lightweight, it's flexible. The biggest downside to the quilt batting is just that over time it starts to kink and you get these little folds in the tail. So in my new version, I'm taking a cue from April Gloria, who has made some amazing tiefling tails, and I am using what is called a foam dowel. These are the 15mm Yaya Han dowels that you can get at Joann Fabrics. This is EVA foam, just like craft foam, but it's in a tube shape, and as you can see, it's really flexible. The best part is that it can bend without folding, and it keeps that smooth shape. EVA foam is heat shapeable, so if your foam gets bent weird like this, or if you want to give it a specific shape, all you have to do is heat it up with a hairdryer or a heat gun and then hold it in the desired shape until it cools. EVA foam does emit toxic chemicals when heated, so work in a well-ventilated area, blah blah blah. These aren't quite long enough individually for my tail, so I am going to glue two of them together end to end. Usually I would use contact cement, fun fact, also toxic, but mine is all dried up, so I'm just gonna use hot glue. Next, we're gonna make the spade for the end, and you have a lot of options for materials on this. My original tail spade was made out of craft foam, but with how much I've worn and traveled with Jester, it is looking a little worse for wear. You could also make it out of cardboard, you could sculpt it from foam clay, basically anything lightweight that you can shape. This time, I'm gonna use a thicker, sturdier EVA foam, and I will shape it with a Dremel. Now I'll glue the spade to the dowel, again with hot glue. And I have a tail-shaped thing. Next up, we need to add color. I will be doing my tail in blue. Yours may be a different color depending on the color of your tiefling. One great and easy option for coloring your tail would be to paint it. However, I'm gonna do something a little different. I use We Love Colors tights and gloves and a leotard for my Jester costume so that they all match each other and, of course, match my face paint. So I'm gonna use those same tights to make sure my tail matches Jester's skin exactly. To do that, I'm gonna sew a long tube and a little spade-shaped cover. The good thing about working with tights is that since they're elastic, you can sew them a little bit smaller than the thing you're covering and they'll stretch and have a really snug fit. I'm just gonna sew it in two parts and then I'll hand stitch them together once they're on to make sure they stay put. Next up, the jewelry cuff. You could do this with foam or some other flexible, lightweight material. Personally, I like using vinyl pleather because it's fabric, so it's flexible and it can also be sewn, but it also has a glossy surface like metal. I don't have any in silver, so I'm just gonna spray paint mine. First, I measured what size rectangle I would need in order to wrap fully around the tail, and then I added a little bit of embellishment to it to give it some texture. It's just a cord. Now I'm spray painting it silver and letting it dry. Blah blah blah, ventilation, don't asphyxiate yourself please. While that's drying, we can work on the attachments. Let's start with the base where it connects to your body. Personally, I kept Jester's tail really simple and easy, and I just added a little hook at the end that can be attached to a belt loop or a waistband. I sewed a metal loop onto the back of Jester's skirt where it would hook together, and the whole connection is hidden underneath the corset. I'm using a keychain clip that I got from the jewelry section of Joann Fabrics. You could really use any connector here. You could use a small carabiner or even just a big safety pin. I just stitched it to the tights. Now for the lower attachment. This tail is able to move on its own because it's suspended from something with fishing line. That's what gives the tail its kind of natural looking bouncy movement. When I'm wearing a skirt with Jester, I attach the fishing line to the hem of the skirt so that the tail hangs just about 10-12 inches below it, around calf level. Other times, like with my goth Jester outfit, I'll attach the fishing line to my wrist so that when I move my hand, the tail moves to match. Start by attaching the fishing line just above the tail spade. You could also attach it to the tip of the tail spade, but I personally like letting the spade hang flat. I think it looks a little bit more realistic and less like the tail is hanging from something. I'm doing this by threading the fishing line through the tights at the base of the tail and then tying it. Just to note, you need to use certain kinds of knots to effectively tie fishing line. I'm using what's called the uni knot. You can also just tie the fishing line around the tail if you aren't using tights. Now, personally, I just tie the other end of the line to a small safety pin so I can hook it to whatever's convenient for that version of the costume. You can make the line as long as you want. Mine is about a foot. It'll depend on where you want it to hang and where you'll be attaching the other end. Finally, let's finish up with the jewelry. I like to add a little dangly jewel, so I'm gonna stitch that on as well. This is just a few pieces cannibalized from some thrift store jewelry. And that's it, your tail is complete. You can now have a proper tiefling booty. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions and feel free to ask if you have any other costume tutorials that you would like to see.